Blog Talk Radio.
It is December 3rd. My name is Raina Starr. With me, as always, is Star Bustamante. The 415 is brought to you in cooperation between The Wild Hunt. Check out The Wild Hunt and Desperate House Witches. So we have a full hour ahead of us to talk about what's been going on. Please bear in mind that all of the opinions expressed on this show are mine and Star's, and are not a reflection of either the Desperate House Witches or the Wild Hunt. So, let's get started. Lots been going on. There's been a lot of nonsense flying around the web, and apparently the media is having a problem figuring out what they're responsible for, how far they should go to let people just say whatever, even if it's false. It's becoming a problem because lives are potentially in danger. Star, what are you thinking about this?
Well, it's really, I don't think this is really anything new. It's just kind of at critical mass at this point. From the beginning of Trump's campaign, leading up to the 2016 election, if you look at how much free advertising the media gave him just because, he was entertaining. You have to wonder, would he have gotten elected at all? Because they did.
When you're watching a train wreck, I think a train wreck to some people is highly entertaining. Therefore, they were giving everything he did airspace because 9 times out of 10, what he was saying was completely outrageous. And you think that outrageous things are going to be, just like a sideshow and then gone. But it seemed like the more outrageous he got, the more media paid attention to him. And now I think we've entered this time period where, because the last 4 years have been nothing but misinformation and disinformation, that I'm not even sure how we get out of that, because outrage still sparks interest. Is there a way to backpedal from all of this, do you think?
Well, I think that's the question. And I want to be clear, it's not just Trump himself. Like we saw during the beginning of the pandemic, they carried his press conferences when they started doing task force press conferences. I remember sitting here at my desk and I'm working and I can see the TV in the other room, and Trump would come on and talk, and they would have the ticker that shows the stock market, and like the first, few press conferences, the stock market just took a nosedive. Like every minute he talked, the stock market fell. But even leading up to that, so major media kind of quit. They would cover him, but then they would cut away. Like they would hear what Fauci had to say or Birx, and then when Trump got up there, they would cut away. And that became an increasing trend as time went on until when he wasn't getting any airtime, then he quit doing them. But the other problem is that you saw a lot of, and this is still happening, is you watch like the Sunday shows, right? The Sunday morning shows where they have on people that are flat out lying, and whoever the, commentator is, they're not even really calling them on it. Now that's begun to shift, but it's still happening. It's only recently that I've heard like Corva Coleman yesterday said, Trump continues to lie in her, like one of her hourly briefings that she does in the morning. And a number of members of the media, John Carl in particular, who's with ABC, he retweeted the tweet that's, where somebody had noted that she had used the actual word lie. And this has been something that the media has been really reluctant to do, is to call when Trump would say something that was an out and out lie. They were very reluctant to do so. Now we've seen that shift, especially since the election. But I mean, it's still a problem. So even calling it out, I mean, I don't really, I mean, there is this whole kind of I can't talk, sensationalization of news and the way things are presented, and people have, they like that, I guess. I mean, it gets, it gets more clicks and it gets more attention, but I think that, we have to get back to not just fact-based reporting, but also, I mean, this whole idea that there can't be bias, or that it's, both sides. I mean, if one side is lying, then you need to report that one side is lying. I mean, that's just,
right.
You can't present, if one, aspect of things is fact-based and it's the truth, and the other is completely false or mostly false, you cannot present those equally, because that's not, right. It's not equal to begin with. So I think that, I mean, the media is still struggling with it.
Yeah, it's been difficult because, well, here's the thing. I mean, I've been around a good number of decades at this point. And, we used to not be afraid of saying something was a lie, but the number of people who have just bought in to one side, these are the people that said to me facts don't matter because their side won. But these are people who aren't even being served by the side that they're rooting for. It never fails to amaze me how people will go against their own best interests to aggravate someone they consider too soft or too loving or too something that's not like them. It's that own the lib thing that I think just gets me, because it's not even based in a reality that I can relate to. I mean, I'm a liberal, yes. I mean, anyone who's ever heard me anywhere at any time knows that. But I don't feel like, I'm not injured by the things they're saying in the sense of, we're going to own the libs. Go ahead, own me. I don't give a shit. I mean, but it's not serving anything. It's not fact-based. I like reality. Listen, my side lies too. I am not going to tell anybody that only one side lies. But when one side tells a couple of lies and the other side is like 90% lies, you kind of have to wonder why people want to go into a non-fact-based reality. Maybe it's me. I don't know.
Well, but I think, people want to, whatever they believe, they will support the things that reinforce those beliefs. So if you live in a world that is, that what you believe to be your reality, and then you're going to resonate, then what's going to resonate with you are the things that reflect those values. And I think that's what we're seeing. But I also think that, the media's job is to report what is happening.
Right.
Lawrence, who was it that wrote an editorial last week, or just the last few days, that really spoke to the fact that we have become so focused on, his point was that even when the president lies, it you know, it's news. But when that person is no longer president, then it ceases to be news in the same way that it would be if that person was president. And was a general call to arms out to the media that, you know, we need to quit. We need to quit reporting on every time Trump does something that's insane once he is no longer president, because it does not have the same value as it did when he was president. So, and I think that's
that's
a really
going to hold? But do you think people are going to go along with that?
Well, I think we've seen how damaging and how dangerous it is to elevate the message that that Trump is putting out there. I mean, it's news because he's president, but once he's not president, there's no real reason to continue to give him bandwidth for that. And I think the media as a whole recognizes how much damage he's done just since the election. You know, he's continued to push this false narrative. The election was rigged, you know, and which is clearly false. You know, they filed how many lawsuits? As of today, I think 42 lawsuits his lawyers have filed, and they've won one. Just this morning, another one that he had filed in Wisconsin was tossed out. But I mean, if you look at some of the things that they're putting out there, I mean, it's absolutely some of the craziest stuff. You know, I don't know, Sidney Powell has like completely, I mean, she must be off her meds or something. I mean, some of the court filings that she's made, if anybody who does legal Twitter and follows legal experts, I mean, they're just like beside themselves. I mean, she quoted facts and figures for like, I think Wisconsin or for Minnesota in her Michigan filing, or vice versa. And you know, and it's like, okay, what's going on here? I mean, that's just any attorney who did that.
When Trump's team is distancing themselves from you, there's a question there about reality that even they can't get next to, which made me go, oh, she's just really off the rails, in my opinion. But, I mean, because nothing she's done has stuck, as far as I can tell. And like you said, she's like cross-referencing things that have nothing to do with one state to another, and it's just, she's kind of made a mess for herself. But, you know, we're talking about the media, and we're talking about, you know, basically mainstream media. What about all of these insane calls for, you know, kill this one, kill that one? All of a sudden it's okay to, like, I mean, listen, there's people we have negative opinions about, but you don't, I mean, I don't like to think of them having any ill will or something horrible happening to them. But these people are like saying, I mean, some of the lawyers are like, you know, Raffensperger should be shot, Sterling should be shot, Fauci should be, somebody was supposed to be hanged, Chris Krebs. I mean, they keep lining up these people, and, you know, their supporters are kind of, you know, the Trump supporters in this regard are kind of, you know, the real base, not just the casual. I'm talking about we're going to go out in the streets with guns base. I mean, are they not at all concerned that someone could seriously be injured? Because they're making these random calls to arms to hurt people, literally. Isn't this against the law?
Right.
I mean,
well, I mean, technically, I would think technically it's probably close to inciting a riot. But yeah, I mean, there have been some. The voting manager for the state of Georgia, who's Gabe Sterling, who's a staunch Republican. And despite everything that's going on, he still says he's going to vote for Perdue and Loeffler. But he delivered like a fiery speech because one of the kids that works for 20-year-old kid who works for the company that owns the voting machines or whatever was basically doing a file data transfer where he took information from one computer and transferred it to another, and somehow they got video of him and outed him, and so he was like getting death threats. Apparently he has a unique last name, and so they were able to find his family, and and so his family has been threatened. Gabe Sterling has been threatened. Raffensperger has been receiving death threats. Somehow they hacked and got his wife's personal cell phone number, and she was getting sexually explicit, threatening texts on her phone. So, I mean, all of this has consequences, but, the fact that Gabe Sterling, who's receiving these threats, and who I might add that Perdue and Loeffler have, they filed a lawsuit against the Georgia Secretary of State, which I don't know if that includes Sterling or not, but I mean, they're attacking other Republicans, and yet he's still going to vote for them. So, if there's no real price for attacking the members of your own party, then, I don't see that stopping anytime soon. But as far as the media goes, I mean, anytime when you work in media and you deal with the news, you have to decide on a regular basis what you're going to give, attention to. Every week I pass on a number of stories that we don't cover simply because either it's not really news, or it's like, do I really want to elevate this, whatever this is that's happening, especially when it's more mainstream, because other people will have covered it.
Right.
So, I mean, how the media deals with that, I mean, yeah, if somebody is, I mean, I think there's a fine line there sometimes. Do you want people to know that these people are being threatened and this is what's being said and this is what's driving it? I mean, you want to get the word out about that, but at the same time, you have to be aware that you can be drawing, attention of people that you really don't want. So, I mean, I think that's always, going to be a hard call, how you report on it, how you present it. But, yeah, I mean, if the fact that the Republicans have not stepped in and really, stomped their dainty little feet and said, stop this, I mean, maybe they're just too fragile to do that. I don't know. But if something doesn't happen, somebody's going to get hurt or killed. News reports have said that the Georgia Secretary of State, Raffensperger, he has Trump caravans driving past his house. He's had to hire private security to keep people off of his property, and he's a Republican. He's a Republican, and they are attacking him and Governor Kemp, all Republicans, because they wouldn't certify the election for Trump when, Biden won the election. They've recounted 3 times now, which, if you're a Biden supporter, you can just cheer every time that they're like, yeah, Biden's still the winner. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think Biden actually got on the last round an additional 137 votes or something like that. It was silly. But I mean,
that was in Wisconsin. He got 87. He got 87 more votes, and the Trump campaign paid over $3 million for a recount, for a partial recount in Wisconsin, and the result of that was that Biden ended up with, like, I think 87 more votes. So hilarious, you know.
And
meanwhile,
I just want to note before you move on from that, I just want to note that these fundraisers that Trump has been doing are what is paying for a lot of this. These new funds that he's requesting for a 2024 run do not all go to that. They are actually going to things that he owes out now, like the $3 million for a recount or other expenses to that end. That's kind of wild. I'm sorry, continue. It's outrageous.
And on that note, I mean, that he is sending out to his supporters, he is, you know, I mean, in the fine print at the bottom, it says 60% of whatever funds that they raise are going to his to pay for his campaign bills. So it's not, you know, which I think we talked last time that he's, you know, in serious debt, like hundreds of millions of dollars for his past campaign. And to date, they've raised over $170 million using these, you know, election challenges as fodder. But the only other thing I was going to say was, you know, meanwhile, while all of this is going on, we are approaching a daily death toll of almost 3,000 people a day. So yesterday, according to Worldometer, 2,833 people died yesterday from COVID-19. So far today, we are already over 2,000. There's 2,038 deaths have been reported this is just the U.S. Yeah. So while all of this is going on, you know, and Trump and his wingnuts are out there raising all these legal challenges and trying to promote, you know, faithless electors, which is, you know, the idea behind that, just to explain what a faithless elector is that, so each state has electors that are part of the Electoral College who on December 14th will go and place their votes for their state in the Electoral College. And, you know, he even pulled in people from Michigan to try and get them to, you know, change the votes of the people, which, you know, if you want a civil war, that'd be the way to do it.
Overthrowing a fairly run election. Yeah, I think people might be a little bit upset if you try to change the results. I just can't get over that he's pulling this kind of craziness. But I shouldn't be surprised because, you know, we've known about Trump forever. So, and, you know, just to gild the lily maybe a little bit, social media is not really helping either because, you know, we're still seeing lies perpetuated. You know, and nobody seems to want to be responsible for any of this. And it's scary because there are groups, you know, Parlay is like one of these interesting groups. It's like, you know, we thought we were getting another style of a Facebook-like thing, and it seems to be overrun with folks who have a certain attitude about guns and God and Trump.
Well, and, you know, here's the funny thing about that. Just today, I saw an article online that people on Parlay are unhappy and bored because they don't have anyone to fight with because they've created this echo chamber. And so everybody that's on that platform, they all think the same thing. They're all a bunch of, you know, conservative wingnuts. And so they don't have anybody to fight with. and they're bemoaning the fact that it's just really not any fun because there's no one to fight with. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up.
Yeah.
You know, I got nothing. I mean, every day I read the news and I think, oh my God, this is so crazy. This is just crazier than anything I have ever seen in my entire life. I mean, when it comes to politics, it's just, it's insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah. I completely agree. But you know, hopefully it'll start to calm down. You know, once Trump leaves office, which is going to come sooner than later, yay, no matter what he actually says, he knows he's lost. I mean, people been reporting from inside the White House that he knows he's lost, but he's, of course, going to go out swinging and making as much noise as possible because that's what the base expects. Okay, go ahead and do what you got to do. And but I do think that once he is gone for a number of months, that people, you know, all the militia talk and all the murder talk will hopefully calm down some. At least I'm very hopeful that will happen. And we'll see. Before we launch into the next story or the next section of news, I want to remind everybody that the Wild Hunt needs your support. Please check out wildhunt.org and give a support. Give some sustaining memberships. It's worth it. It's cheap, you know, and you're getting so much for that money. You're getting news every single day, and it's actual journalism, not just opinion pieces. And the Wild Hunt is very good about showing what is an opinion piece. So you will not be tricked or fooled or any of that nonsense. If you want real news and you're a pagan, definitely check out the Wild Hunt. All right, moving right along. So, of course, on the way out, we're talking pardons because apparently we'll get into the pardon for sale part in a minute, but we were talking yesterday about Giuliani looking for a pardon, perhaps self-pardoning. Trump was talking about the fact, and they played it this morning, that he absolutely feels that he has the absolute right to pardon himself. Excuse me, I don't think so. But he wants to preemptively pardon his children. And I think he doesn't understand still, even though people have told him probably that will protect you from federal charges but not from state. He's very clear that SDNY is still after him. I don't know if they're also pursuing Trump and Giuliani, or the kids rather, and Giuliani. I know they're going to have charges against Trump. So what's the situation? I mean, just because he says it doesn't make it true. You know, the desire to be able to pardon yourself doesn't mean you get to do it just because you say it, right?
Right. So, as near as I can tell,
okay,
the only preemptive pardons that have been done, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, someone will, you know, graciously correct me on our feed. As far as I know, Ford pardoned Nixon. Nixon was never charged with any crimes, but he pardoned him anyway on any future charges. So, you know, I don't know that. I don't know how that's going to stand up, you know, for Trump to pardon his children and Giuliani and whatever. You know, part of that may be reflective of, you know, right now the Trump transition team is still being investigated over misappropriation of funds from his inauguration, you know, because there's millions of dollars that were that they don't know what happened to them, you know, I mean, for starters, like Ivanka was just had to give, was just interviewed for like over 5 hours over her role in the transition and the inauguration for Trump, because they paid like 3 times the market value because they used a Trump property, right? So that may be part of what's driving this. I mean, it's this whole administration does not live in, their idea of what law and order is. I mean, it just kind of goes back to these crazy lawsuits that have been filed. Trump's tactic has always been to just exhaust whoever he's fighting by filing, dozens and dozens of lawsuits, so that eventually people they become exhausted and they're like, okay, I'll just, it's easier to pay him or concede defeat than it is to have to put up with this bullshit, basically. But that's not, that's a real abuse of our legal system to operate that way. And
right.
So that gives you an idea of how warped their perception of how the law works. I mean, so in his mind, if he preemptively pardons, his kids and Giuliani and anybody else that, I think it's very likely that, he may try to pardon Manafort before he leaves. And I mean, and it's, and I want to be clear that it's not unusual for an incumbent who is about to leave office to end his term by issuing pardons. That's pretty standard practice. One of the interesting things where Trump is concerned is that he's probably pardoned fewer people than any other president in modern history. I think it's like 70 something people is all he's pardoned, which is really unusual.
Yeah, but the difference is that the people that he's pardoned, for the most part, are either celebrity-related, Obama-related, or directly related to his relationships. For example, Mike Flynn, Roger Stone, Rod Blagojevich, which was an Obama one, but I think Trump just was very interested in undoing anything Barack did. If anybody remembers, Blagojevich had charges against him for trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat once he became president. So that's interesting. So apparently the crime is not even germane to Trump's mindset as far as who to excuse and who not to excuse.
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear, I misspoke. As of the 25th, he'd only pardoned, commuted, or rescinded the convictions of 45 people. So that's a really small number.
Right.
Obama's time in office, he granted he did 2 terms, but he either commuted sentences or pardoned like almost 2,000 people. On average, presidents probably, anywhere between.
Right.
So that's a very small number. And you're right. If you look at the people that Trump has chosen to pardon, I mean, they have all been people like Blagojevich, who, I mean, there's absolutely there was no question that he had done what he did when he was convicted. The sheriff in was it Maricopa County? In Arizona.
Yeah.
There was no question. He admitted he did it and was proud of it. and Trump pardoned him.
Yeah.
Roger Stone. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the majority of people that he's pardoned have been his cronies, have been people that it was advantageous for him politically to pardon. So I would not be surprised if he pardoned Manafort. Rick Gates' name has been tossed around. I think that's unlikely.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Gates did testify again. He did give up some information, so I think it's unlikely that Trump will pardon him.
I agree with you. So, I'm sure Rudy will get a pardon at some point. Probably soon.
Right, but it won't do him any good if, because it's, unless, anything that might prevent federal charges, but it's hard to say whether it will or not, because if you haven't been charged with something, the problem with the preemptive pardon is to say, well, this person can never be charged with anything, and then they go out the next day and murder somebody. Are you not going to charge them? I mean, it would set a really terrible precedent that I can't even see the conservative Supreme Court saying, oh yeah, that's totally, legit. I can't see them upholding that. So there's really no precedent. And as far as him pardoning himself, it's been really funny to kind of watch this evolve too, because you have people saying, well, you don't know that, it's never been done before. And it's like, well, just because there's a reason it's never been done before. And while there may not be a precedent for it, and you can argue that all day long, that, well, it's never been done, so there's no precedent, I just can't see that. If that's the case, then it undermines everything that our legal system and our democracy stands for. And I can't see anybody who loves the law saying, yeah, totally, let's go with this, I just don't see that as happening.
Agree with you.
Yeah, right.
It's not likely.
It would not preclude being charged at the state level, and Lord knows that there's plenty of fodder for those cannons in New York and Florida and yeah.
Oh, in Florida too? The new home base of Trump? That they've got legal I see. I thought he left New York to avoid state charges. But if he's already got state charges in his current residence, I guess he can't go anywhere except out of the country at this point. And I've heard
I don't
that
know.
Might happen.
I don't know that there have been any charges filed in Florida per se, but they would still be a possibility. I mean, obviously, as long as DeSantis is governor, that's a possibility. But at the rate Florida's going, it's going to be COVID central, since they have just opened everything wide up, and so anyway.
That's bad. Wow. Okay, so we're at a point where, we know what pardons can and cannot do to a certain extent, and it doesn't look like the Supreme Court is going to take the case as far as election fraud, because no fraud has truly been presented. So that would probably, because you can ask for anything. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. So it looks like that's kind of not going to happen. So let's talk about the next interesting point. Trump not having Biden to the White House to even attempt a peaceful transfer of power. There's more layers than that, than having the two men sit down. But that's a tradition that's long-standing.
Yeah.
So what the hell?
So, well, I would say that it's impossible at this point to say what will happen on that. As of yesterday, Trump was still peddling this, the election was stolen. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna participate in the inauguration. I'm not gonna meet with him at the White House. But whether that actually ends up being the case, it's impossible to say, because, I mean, this administration, will come out and say one thing one day and something else the next. And I think that, Trump is pretty mercurial in his approach to things. So it could change. But yes, that would be a huge shift away from what has been the tradition and norm. What does that even mean? What does normal even look like? I don't know anymore.
I don't know. Not a clue. Yeah. It's not what we thought it was, apparently, because now Trump has thrown the whole normal book out, and now it seems like we're almost starting over. And I think going into a new administration, it may be time. You don't realize that the country is basically being held together by a handshake until you come across somebody who doesn't want to shake hands. So I think we're going to have to, the things that we took for granted as being the norm, I think we're going to have to redefine in such a way that we can't have this happen again, as far as things like maybe pardons, maybe president is allowed to do and what a president's not allowed to do. I'm just saying.
Well, I think that those kinds of things are going to be really hard to muster support for. But I do think that some of the things that we may see as far as presidential races, for starters, I think that there's very likely to be a resolution that presidents must turn over their financial information for the last, 5 or 10 years, probably. I think it's also likely that there will be some kind of attempt, if not, they may not be able to get it through, but I think there'll be an attempt to where anything that a president owns, that it will now be required that they put their holdings in a trust, or that they have to show proof that they have no access to those funds, because it's pretty clear. One of the little gems from yesterday's news cycle was that Trump and addresses that are held by Trump and Jared Kushner for various businesses that they own had received $3.65 million in paycheck protection plans. And as far as the media could tell, and the media sued, news journalists sued to get this information, and as far as they could tell, only one employee maybe had been retained, which is the whole point of the program. So, and they should neither one of them should have had access to those funds, nor had been qualified, because these were all supposed to be for small businesses. So I think that's really interesting.
It is, actually. So what do you think about the whole Bill Barr suddenly saying that, basically saying there was no election fraud? I found that very shocking, that Trump's personal DOJ is not agreeing with him.
Well, I think that Barr sees the writing on the wall. I mean, he's in peril for sure.
Yeah. Is it too late to fire him? Does it is there a point to firing him at this late hour?
You're asking about the Trump administration doing something crazy. I think
silly me.
I think from reports that I've seen, they apparently had a very contentious meeting on Tuesday after he made that announcement. Although the article that I saw made a point to mention that Trump was not screaming, which I thought was kind of hilarious, that they had to make a point to mention that. So either he screams regularly or, so I don't really know what exactly that was indicative of. I suspect he screams a lot. So, I mean,
I've heard that.
And he wouldn't say that he had not lost. He wouldn't say whether he still had confidence in Barr or not. So it could be any day now that he just tweets that Barr is out. So we'll see.
That's interesting. I mean, at least one person has said, okay, it's not going. I'm not going to continue to play the game, but I can't imagine why he's the only one who's suddenly saying, oh, the handwriting's on the wall. Maybe I should let this go. Like, you would think Giuliani has a clue and that maybe it's time to let this go. But apparently he's so entrenched. I don't think he has any exit strategy whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Well, this. It's hard to say what direction this is all going to take. Well, yeah, and I mean, just this administration is a dumpster fire in as far as the things that they've done. I mean, there are so many. I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole with this. I'm just gonna I'm gonna stop.
Yeah. So the other thing we were going to cover was the whole redacted information that suddenly came out.
Oh, the court, yeah. So, and this garden, this is under the whole pardon thing. Apparently, there was a court filing back in August, kind of a pay-to-play bribery, request for a pardon that involved.
I'm just gonna let me run through this blurb very quickly. Basically, the Justice Department in August investigated a potential bribery for pardon scheme. Very interesting. And large contributions were offered in exchange for a presidential pardon, according to some court records that were unsealed this week on Tuesday. It's heavily redacted. We've seen that. There's like 9 pages of nothing but black line. So it seems like it's going to take some doing to get all of that information released. But apparently it's much worse than we thought it was. Welcome to that club. I mean, I think Trump has probably, in my opinion, because, it's all about my opinion right now, probably the most corrupt president in history, probably did the most to damage his own people, really thought it was going to be like a kingship from what I can tell. And my opinion is still America, and we don't have kings. So I don't know what that's all about, but apparently, we're still a democracy, folks. We fortunately got a new administration on its way in, and hopefully it will turn the tide of what we've been having to deal with, because this has just been insane in any event. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Nope, we're not going to wrap it up. Hang on. We'll wrap it up in a minute, but the fact of the matter is that it's still a democracy. It's not a dictatorship. We don't have kings in America. We hopefully will never have to go through this again. But also bear in mind that Trump is talking about a 2024 run. And I have to tell you that I am concerned about it because I can see his base coming back in full force and, just laying low for the next 4 years and then trying to put him back into office. I can only hope that enough truth comes out that folks will be like, yeah, no. Do you think people will get bored with him, even his supporters?
I think that, if you don't continue to put fuel on the fire, eventually the fire goes out.
Okay.
I don't think his supporters are going to go away per se, because basically, you've kind of he's created almost a third party with his followers. But I do think that I don't think that there's any way that you're going to see him run in 2024. First of all, his health is crap. I mean, his health is crap. I don't see him being in any kind of shape to run again. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of energy, and they can hop him up on all kinds of drugs if they want. I mean, I'm still of the school of thought that he probably has some form of dementia or some other type of, neurological
malady.
or brain issue, whatever. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
So I think that's unlikely, and I think it's also unlikely that any of all the members of his family, the person who is perhaps the most likely to be able to pull something like that off would probably be Ivanka, and I just don't see I don't see the appetite for that, frankly. Don Jr. maybe, but I don't see him having the kind of following that his father does.
Right.
He doesn't have broad enough appeal. So I really think that is unlikely. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I just don't see it.
Right, and we've already seen how the Trump quote-unquote magic does not rub off on other people, because in a lot of the races over the past 4 years where he was supporting the Republicans had lost because the magic just doesn't rub off on them. It's like Trump is a very specific thing, and just because you align yourself with him doesn't mean you're going to win your race. So that's just another thing I have noticed.
I think the thing that we've really seen more than anything is that he has created this environment where that kind of rhetoric thrives. He's capitalized on the shortcomings within our own culture and cultivated those in a way that paid off for him. Now, whether but we've seen other people that that are just as damaging. I mean, come on, Lindsey fucking Graham got reelected. Mitch McConnell is still holding on to his seat. So there's definitely people that will support those kinds of candidates.
Right.
Simply because it reinforces, like I said at the beginning, it reinforces the ideology that they themselves hold and says that they're right in whatever it is that they think or believe. And so because that has such a resonance, they're going to continue to vote for people that you and I could not be bothered to walk across the street and spit on, frankly. I mean, so they resonate with that, and they're going to continue to vote for these people, whether we like it or not. There's certainly a demographic that is, they vote against their own best self-interest every election, and that has been true for the last 30 years, really. over and over again. We have seen people who will vote for, I mean, look at how many people voted for Reagan. You know, he won by a landslide.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that while it's discouraging to see how many people voted for Trump, you know, we still have to remember that, you know, almost 80 million people voted for Biden.
Right.
And Harris, which is, you know, I mean, I think that that's an important distinction. You know, she's a woman. She's a woman of color. So, I mean, to me, that just says that things can change. But I think we're also going to have to really, you know, the work does not stop here.
Right.
You know, people need to, you know, if you're in Georgia and you're not registered to vote, you need to be registered to vote, and you need to vote early for the January 6th runoff. Because if Democrats retake, if they win in Georgia, they retake the House, or not the Senate. I'm sorry.
The Senate.
They retake the Senate, and that means that Dems will have control of all three branches.
And things can
but
get
I mean,
done.
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, and I think we have to believe, but we also have to continue to do the work. You know, gerrymandering is going to continue to be a problem. It's something that we are all going to have to continually fight. You know, even in a state like North Carolina, where we have a Republican legislature, even though we have a great Democratic governor, the legislature is who decides, you know, that makes those calls on how census information is used and how districts are redrawn, although they got their little asses handed to them the last time around because they, you know, there were plenty of legal challenges and, you know, the court said, no, you're going to have to redraw these. You know, how fairly they redrew them, you know, I mean, it was enough that it couldn't be challenged again. But I mean, I think that we're going to see more and more of this over the next, you know, probably 10 years at least, because that's, you know, until the next census happens.
Right.
Yeah. So that's pretty much,
I don't even know
where we are.
I don't even know how the census even looks right now, because there were so many questions about keep counting people. No, it's time to cut it off. I mean, I don't even know where we landed on that. So that's going to be interesting. I don't even know how any judgments funding-wise are going to be made based on the current census that we just did recently.
Well, actually there's already some legal challenges to the census, and because the administration wants to throw out some of the data. And it's looking like that there's going to be some pushback on that. And even the Supreme Court is not wanting to rule on it. So they may decline to even hear the case, which if that's the case, then it goes to the lower court.
Right.
So from what I'm seeing, like 2 days ago, that they expressed some doubts because they wanted to cut undocumented immigrants from the census counts, and it looks like the court basically the conservative arm of the court pretty much expressed some doubt and like that. So I don't know what's gonna end up happening with that.
Yeah, well, guys, watch this space because we'll be back next month to report more. Once again, thank you to my co-host, as always, Star Bustamante. Please check out The Wild Hunt. Go to wildhunt.org. Please give them all your support. We really appreciate you spending some time with us and listening to our review of what's been happening as far as the election goes. And we will see you all next month. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.